Today's guest is Carla Naumburg. She's here for the third time to talk about a new book, How to Stop Freaking Out. It's her kids' guide for how to keep cool when life feels chaotic. Her adult books are amazing. Your kids will appreciate this book too. This conversation was very relaxed and funny. I hope you enjoy it. Let's keep calm and mother on. Mothering is way too important to do alone and way too serious to be serious all the time. My name is Christy Thomas, and I am here shoulder to shoulder with you, mothering and enjoying life together. This is the podcast where you can focus on being mindful and taking a deep breath with me and learning new things so you can pause and savor the amazing life you already have. I am so excited to welcome Carla for a third time onto Keep Calm Mother On, because this time she's written a book for kids, which is amazing. And it's called How to Stop Freaking Out. And it's coming out here on September 10th. And welcome, Carla.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be back talking to you. It's always so fun.
So your books have been some of my favorite books ever because you take this normal human experience of not being able to control your emotions and like not being in touch with your body and feelings and make it so you can figure it out.
Oh, thank you for saying that. That's so lovely because you just basically summarized my entire life's work in a way that nobody ever has. Can I make that my tagline?
Sure. Yeah. I'll send it to you and I'll give you the transcript.
I'll send you my royalties. No, Christy, you're absolutely right. I mean, I was always raised to think, nobody ever said this to me, but I think the implicit message was you should be able to control yourself. And that means controlling your feelings, controlling your thoughts, controlling your body and your behaviors. And what it took me a very long time to figure out is you can't control your feelings. I mean, yes, you can influence them, right? We can make choices that'll make it more likely that we're happy or sad or anxious or mad or whatever, but ultimately we can't control them. Mm-hmm. And as someone, I'm sure many smart people have said this, and I heard it somewhere by some smart person, you can't control your first thought. Maybe you can control your second one.
I like that. Oh my gosh. I need a bumper sticker for that one. Yeah.
And, we can't control what pops into our brain. But if we notice it and we have skills and strategies, we might be able to have a lot of influence on what the next thought is and the thought after that. And we really, our bodily sensations, whatever the experiences we're feeling in our body, we often can't control that. And as a 47-year-old woman, I'm learning that there are all sorts of new and exciting bodily experiences one has.
Why does menopause and our kids going through puberty happen at the same time?
My poor husband lives with 3 women and he's like, I'm in crazy town.
Mine too.
And for years, I just had no idea what was going on in my body. I really was like, unless it was unbelievably painful, I was totally not aware.
Yeah.
And so a big part of what I talked about in How to Stop Losing Your Shit with Your Kids, and now in the middle grade version, How to Stop Freaking Out, is awareness of all these things, because they all impact whether or not we're about to freak out. And if we know what's going on, maybe we can respond in a thoughtful way instead of just losing it.
And I think it's important to talk about how feelings are different than thoughts, because I think early on, I don't know where I got the message as a kid, but like feelings weren't to be trusted, but thoughts were, when it's the complete opposite.
Oh, I don't think you can trust any of it.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, I mean, look, so feelings versus thoughts. So let's start with thoughts. For many of us, thoughts are basically the sentences in your head, right?
Okay.
And feelings generally start, and we don't talk about this, and the reason they're called feelings is because they generally start as some sort of sensation in our body. Often we're not aware of it, and we're pretty quick to jump to, I feel anxious. Like you might have, butterflies in your stomach. Mm-hmm. And so before you can even process that your shoulders are tense and your heart is racing, you got butterflies in your stomach, you just are like, I feel anxious. So a great way to figure out whether you're having a feeling or a thought is, how do you finish the sentence? I feel. And if you finish it with, I feel sad, I feel angry, I feel anxious, I feel scared, then it's a feeling.
Okay.
If you finish it with, I feel like.
Ooh.
I feel like going for a walk. I feel like punching the wall. I feel like throwing the remote control. I feel like hugging my sister. Then that's a thought, actually. And so the I feel versus I feel like, I think, is a great way to distinguish between those two.
That's awesome. Okay. So you wrote this book for kids. Do you think they'll read it independently? Do you think they should read it with your grownups? Let's talk about a little bit, because it's got like great cartoons. It's a fun book to hold and flip through with quizzes.
I really wanted to make this fun for kids. I didn't want to write a book that has the, as I call it, wall of words, where you just open up the book and it's like word, 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 word. And the kid is like, I can't. Because I know this is a topic that most kids aren't naturally going to be like, sure, I'll totally, ditch Harry Potter for this self-help book. I'm definitely going to do that. And so I worked with my amazing publisher over at Workman. It's full color. There's illustrations on every page. We've got quizzes and fun facts and all the things that make it fun. Shout out to my daughters who are like, Mom, you got to put the quizzes in. Kids love the quizzes.
And I love the little fun facts, the freak out super facts, like about spiders and random things.
I love random facts. So that was fun for me to come up with. I hope when a kid gets into the book, they will find it engaging and readable and funny. And we talk about farts and burps and all the things I talked about and how to stop losing your shit. But here's my advice. I never want a parent to make a kid read a book. I am a huge fan of reading. I want my kids to read. I want the whole world to read. Please, parents, don't make your kid read this book. Feel free to buy it. That's a great idea. Love that. Love that. But then just leave it somewhere. Just leave it in the house. Just leave it and ignore it.
In the back of this book, you reference Catherine Newman's How to Be a Person book. It's by Workman too. It has the same like vibe.
Yes, she is one of my heroes, one of my literary
she's
heroes.
Amazing.
And if you're listening to this, she just wrote a book called Sandwich
it's on my
phenomenal.
List.
Yeah, Sandwich is not a kid book. It's like
it's her like grown-up novel.
Yeah, it's a grown-up. She's amazing. She's amazing. So my vibe with books, whatever you want your kids to read, leave them out. And then if your kid asks about it, be like, I don't know, and just walk away. Like, don't care, because this book really is for kids ages, I would say, like 8 to 12. And that's especially at an age where they're still sort of earnest and they still sort of care about our opinion, but they also are increasingly interested in not caring about our opinion.
Yep.
Right. And so just leave it and walk away. And if you are a parent who frequently reads with your kids, and you're trying to pick the next book, put it in with a couple of other options and let them choose, right? So that you're not forcing it upon them, but you leave it out. They'll flip through it. And I'm hoping kids will really be into it. And if you're a parent, you could also read it too for a quick review of how to not freak out.
Absolutely. This is one of those books where like it helps to have that common language. Like, oh yeah, did you burp today? How's your farts?
I think it's more like, you just farted and now you need to burp or something like that, which on the one hand might get you a little off track. Maybe we should talk about why I use these acronyms.
Yes.
Things a little off track, but at least you'll all end up laughing, which is better than anything.
Okay. So how to figure out if you're freaking out. That's what fart means, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I actually came up with these acronyms for my adult book because I have the sense of humor of an 8-year-old. And I really feel like we adults can start taking things so seriously, and that just increases our stress and tension, makes everything seem harder or scarier, and that's not the vibe I'm going for in my books, in my life, in anything. So
I think I absorbed a tagline from you. I say it all the time, that motherhood is too serious to be serious all the time.
Yeah, I think I stole that from somebody else. I should probably find out who. Somebody used to say like life is far too serious to be taken seriously, and so I use that with parenting too.
Yeah,
right?
it's just too much. But yeah, these funny things. So fart. Let's explain what fart is.
So these are the features, I believe, of a freak out, because freakouts look different for everyone, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think the common features, the F is for feelings, right? Our freakouts are driven by our emotions. It's an emotional experience. It's not a logical experience. It's not like we think to ourselves, I think I'll lose it right now. We don't do that. And if you do, that would actually be kind of cool, because then you could just decide, oh wait, I'm not actually going to do that. But so it's not a logical experience. It's driven by emotions. So the F is for feelings. The A and R are for automatic and reactive. So it happens very quickly. It's like a switch is flipped. It's usually in reaction to something. And the reactive, it may be something that's in the here and now. Like, you know, your sister steals the last cupcake and runs away and you just lose it. Or it could actually be something happening in the background. Let's say you're a kid with like a sick grandparent who's in the hospital and you're really worried about them. And then you go to school and maybe you're not even thinking about your grandparent, but something happens and you just fall apart.
Yep. It's just simmering.
It's simmering in the background, but we're generally freaking out in reaction to something going on, whether or not we're aware of it. And then the last one. So in the adult book, the word I use for T is toxic, which means that our flip outs, our losing our shit with our kids is kind of toxic for our relationship.
Yeah.
But I decided that for kids, I was going to switch that T to too far.
Yeah.
So you're taking things too far. And the example I give in the book is like, let's say you're hanging out with your little cousin who's a toddler and they're about to run into the street, into traffic. So you grab their arm to pull them back and maybe you grab a little bit harder than you mean to, and they get a little upset. But the reality is, and probably that was driven by your feelings, right? You had this emotional reaction of danger, freaking out. Maybe not freaking out. That's not what I'm trying to say. You have this emotional reaction of anxiety,
like
worry,
fear. Yeah.
Fear. And your reaction was automatic and reactive, but you probably didn't take things too far because that was an appropriate reaction to keep your cousin safe.
Yep.
Whereas if that same little cousin stole your cupcake and you totally flip out at them, you're probably taking things too far.
Yeah.
So
if you tackle them for the cupcake, it's too far. If you tackle them to not run across a busy road.
Right.
Probably safe.
Right, exactly.
Like
so
the grown-ups are going to say thank you for that one.
Yeah. Good job, buddy. So it's feelings, automatic, reactive, too far. That's the FAR acronym. So that's a way of trying to figure out, you know, am I freaking out or not?
Okay. And when we're freaking out, it's usually because, like buttons have been pushed that we don't know we have. And so we have to be aware of like our life. Is that right? Yeah.
So the metaphor I use for freaking out is that we've got some kind of buttons, right? And they're invisible buttons and they connect our thoughts and feelings to our nervous system in our body. And when these buttons are pushed, depending on how well we're doing, depending on how many burps we've done that day, which I call our button reduction practices. Some people call self-care, goes a little bit beyond self-care.
Yep.
Our buttons may be pretty small and dark and hard to find, and you have to push them a whole bunch of times to light up that nervous system and trigger that freak out. But, you know, if we're having a hard day, if we haven't slept all night, if our, you know, dog is missing, if our best friend isn't talking to us, if we've got a math test we're stressed about, those buttons are getting bigger and bigger and brighter and glowing and super pushable. And then your sister walks in and steals the cupcake. And maybe it's like chocolate. You don't even like chocolate cupcakes. You like vanilla. But the fact that this kid did this and you're so into your sister, and sisters are annoying. I know because I'm a sister, and you just lose it. And maybe, you know, if everything was going okay and you got an A on your math test and you had a great time at soccer tryouts and you slept well enough last night, your buttons are so small and dark and not pushable that your sister can come in and take this cupcake and you don't freak out because you're like, I don't like the chocolate ones anyway.
Yep.
So it's really about these buttons and when they get pushed, and not only having an awareness of what makes our buttons big and bright and super pushable, but also having an awareness of those triggers. Triggers make the buttons big and bright and pushable, and then having an awareness of the things in our life that push our buttons, right?
Yeah. Do different people have different size buttons naturally? Like, are some people born with bigger buttons than others?
100%. And anyone who has had two different babies or seen two different babies, right? Know that some babies, and this is true for adults and every age in between, feel like they move through the world like one giant button, right? And then other babies are like, you can do whatever you want. I'm just going to chill here. As long as you feed me and burp me and snuggle me, I'm good, right? And so, for example, as an adult, and since motherhood, my buttons generally are bigger, brighter, and more glowy than they used to be. And all of a sudden I've learned about this whole exciting world of triggers that set me on edge. You know, for me, I'm a very sensitive person. I think I would qualify as a highly sensitive person. And so lots of loud noises, bright lights, sounds, strong smells, yesterday my husband and I went clothes shopping and I was trying on all these clothes. And after like 15 minutes, I was like, I'm done. Just the mere act of taking on and off clothes is such a sensorily overwhelming experience that I noticed my buttons were big and bright. And I was like, buddy, husband, dear one, if we don't get out of here, I'm going to start losing it with you. And it's not your fault. It's because I'm so overwhelmed by this like big box store and the bright lights and all the things.
So many things.
Oh my God. And my husband, he could try on clothes all day long, doesn't even notice. It's very annoying.
I notice my buttons regarding stores a lot more like post-pandemic life.
Oh, isn't that interesting? That's such a good point. Yes. It's not great. So yes, people naturally have sort of a different set point. Some people are more sensitive than others. And it's just a thing in life that you need to learn about yourself and acknowledge and respect it. I don't think there's a lot you can do to change that set point, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. But we can learn about how to deal with these freakouts, which I didn't really learn until I was a grown up. And that's what your book is trying to solve, I think.
Yeah. I mean, look, sadly, there's not a book on the planet, not even mine, that will ever completely eradicate the freakout. Right. And, especially not in kids, because they literally don't have the part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, that keeps you from freaking out. Like, it just doesn't exist yet. I just imagine this big gaping hole in their little heads.
Yeah. It's like,
which isn't actually quite accurate. They do have some neurons there, and so the way I think about this book is planting the seeds.
Okay.
Right. We teach our kids ABCs before we teach them to read. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to like give kids these ideas and skills and practices so that over time they can be like, oh, I think I learned about this once. Right. Cause as we all know, I don't know about your kids, but mine, I generally have to say things to them more than once before.
Amazingly so.
Before it lands. It doesn't always land the first time. So
or they need to hear it from someone else. That's not even me. Like I can say it and then someone else will say it. And I'm like, oh, that's brand new to you, huh?
I've only been saying that to you since 2001. Thanks, babe. No, and the truth is I can't fault my kids for that because my husband and I have basically the same relationship. I'll come home and be like, you'll never guess what I learned. He's like, I've been saying that to you for 10 years. I'm like, no, I've literally never heard you say that.
But I think that's just how the human brain works for some facts for relationships.
100%. Yeah. It's totally normal. I just call it, I refer to it as the fun marital game we like to play. And that sort of takes the edge off it. We've been married 20 years, so I think I'll keep calling it that. Yeah, but what I'm trying to do is teach kids, and I did this in How to Stop Losing Your Shit as well, specific practices, skills, strategies they can do that work. And these are the burps. These are the button reduction practices that work both to make your buttons smaller and less pushable, but also to help you calm down after a freak out.
And I think my favorite one for this book, you came up with 26, and there's a whole alphabet of burps that you can do. And the one I wrote down was quack like a duck. Why did you come up with quack like a duck?
So I think, well, first of all, I needed a Q word, and that's not so easy. So I was like, Q, yay. But it actually, I think in the previous book, I referred to it as cluck like a chicken. And because that's actually something I've done with my kids. Not in their teenage years, but in their middle grade and elementary years, they were much more open to it. Now I think they would roll their eyes and run away. But the idea behind this is that sometimes we get to a point where, for better or for worse, our bodies are so full of tension, right? And we're in this fight, flight, freeze, flip out, fix mode, right? So in the book, I go beyond just fight or flight because people freak out in different ways.
Yes.
But when we get into the fight, flight, freeze, flip out, fix mode, like our muscles are tense, our bodies are tense, our feelings are either, sad or mad or worried or scared or whatever. And the tension is there and it needs to be released somehow. And in all honesty, a freak out is an effective way to get that tension out. It's just probably not an effective way to get what you want, to be successful, to maintain good relationships. And so we need some other very physical way sometimes to get that out. And for some kids, it might be jumping jacks or running around or shooting hoops or throwing a ball or whatever. But quacking like a duck or making some really loud, weird sound that does not have the
of value,
intensity of a freak out,
yeah.
right? Can both have the effect of getting that tension, releasing that tension, right? Satisfying your body's need to like lose it.
Yep.
While also being funny and breaking up the moment. And so I don't want to suggest to a kid they should walk around for half an hour quacking like a duck, because that's actually incredibly annoying. Right?
That will trigger a freak out in the parent.
Yes, 100% it would. And that would be a reasonable freak out. But in the moment, you know, singing like a verse of your favorite song or clucking like a chicken or quacking like a duck can get that tension out.
I've read The Book with No Pictures. Have you ever read that book by B.J. Novak?
I love The Book with No Pictures.
So my students, when they're having a hard time, that book is always in my room. And I was like, pick out a phrase to say. Just say badonky face or like, you know, something. Be silly.
Right? It's brilliant. That's exactly what it is. Just to like, and the other thing that I love about you giving them the book and pick out a phrase is it really gives them agency over what they want to do. Right. And when you have that phrase to say, not only is it a silly way to redirect your emotional intensity, but it also focuses your thoughts.
Yeah.
Because instead of thinking like, I'm so mad or school is boring or whatever they're struggling with, all they're thinking is badonkey face, which is like, the world would be such a better place if all of us tamed our like wild, crazy, unhelpful, out of control thoughts with badonkey face.
Yep.
It's perfect. I love that.
It just gives the space, right? Because we need to just notice our feelings and our thoughts. We need some sort of buffer. And that's what the burps do.
Yeah. So the burps not only calm down our buttons so that they'll be like, my favorite burp is sleeping, right? It's just, it's like the best burp. And so, and the way that comes into play in our family is sometimes either me or my daughters, my husband functions much better on less sleep, but either me or my daughters will just be losing it. And if it's one of my girls, sometimes I have this one kid who like, when she falls off that cliff of exhaustion, it's like everything is terrible and her friends all hate her and her life is terrible and school is terrible and everything is terrible. And I literally will just say to her, you know what? This all sounds really important. I think your tired brain is too exhausted to think clearly about this right now. I think you just need to go to sleep. And I promise you, if you're still having these thoughts and feelings and worries in the morning, we will tackle them then when your brain can function. And when her buttons are no longer so bright that even her own thoughts push her buttons, right? Isn't that crazy to think about?
My kid, I have a kid like this too, where like nighttime it just is overloaded with thoughts and they're not to be trusted. Work. Yeah.
And I have actually, from time to time, this kid will freak out and she'll just be sobbing in her bed at night. And I have literally, I'll spend like a half an hour, 45 minutes trying to console her. And then I'll just say, you know what, buddy? I think you just need to cry yourself to sleep and it's okay. Like you're allowed to do that because her brain is so like out of control. And then she wakes up in the morning and I kind of wait. Is she going to bring up all these things? And she literally never has. I mean, if she does, if they're still there, of course we'll talk about them, but they literally never are, or at least they haven't been, because sleep is such a powerful button reduction practice that when she wakes up in the morning, she can like think clearly and function well. And so like so many times when kids are losing it, it's because it's like basic needs aren't being met, like sleep, they're hungry,
they're thirsty.
They're thirsty. And I'm not saying that the parents are failing the kids. I'm saying that it's part of the natural kid experience to not realize and name these things. Right?
It's part of the natural human experience, right? Like how many times as a mom, I'm like, oh, I'm really mad right now because I actually just need to go pee. And like, I am making the situation worse.
That is 100% true. 100% true. Yeah.
Like, I wish it was just easier to check in with your body, but you have a practice for that too. Do you remember that analogy?
Yes.
The calm? How do we check in with our bodies?
Yeah. So calm is a great practice that I think Dr. Christopher Willard, who also writes about mindfulness for kids, I think I got it from him, but it might just be one of these things floating around the mindfulness world. But it's the C is for chest. So just checking in, I consider this sort of your whole upper torso and maybe even your arms, checking in with your breathing. Does your breathing feel tight and fast? Like, how is that going? How are your arms? Are your shoulders all tense? Like I literally
earring shoulders.
Like my shoulders up on my ears and I somehow don't notice it. and then I'll drop them. And just the act of sort of suddenly and quickly dropping my shoulders, I instantly sort of feel better, which is amazing how quickly you can feel better in that way. So the A is for arms, actually, right?
Yep.
I think A was
chest,
A is
arms, and then legs. Yep.
And then the M, did I put it as mind or mouth?
Mouth. Yeah. Mouth for this one. Cause it's all body. Yeah.
It is all body. So I was trying to figure out like a way to remind kids, like, first of all, is your jaw tight and tense? How's that all going? But I also think about like, what's coming out of your mouth? Like, what are you saying? In my house, we have a phrase that we refer to as mouth noises. Ooh, because I'm such a sensitive person. And sometimes my kid, like sensitive, like in terms of sensory input. And sometimes my kids will just be like, we're sitting at the table and they're like squeaking and meowing, or they're just saying words that have nothing to do with anything. And I'm like, guys, this is too many mouth noises for me. Like, I can't. I need
my 11-year-old is a drummer now, and there's a lot of drumming noises. Yeah, which is great for him. I love it, but also I hate it. Right? That's the honesty of motherhood.
Can you? Do you have like a neighbor with a basement? You could. Like,
we have the basement, thankfully, and like the drum that he practices right now is just a drum pad because he's at the beginning level, so it's easy. Amazing. But like those rhythms are now in him. And they just come out randomly. Oh, so he's doing
the drumming all the time.
Yeah, like mouth or like pencils, right? Like it's just in him. Knowing how to like what's coming out of you is important.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my. Yeah. And some people don't even notice, right? Like my husband, all these little mouth noises be coming out, and he'll be like, "What? What's that?" Like it just doesn't faze him, which is a better way to be. If you can be that way, just choose that instead. But unfortunately, it's not a choice. It's not a choice.
So with all of these things, button reduction practices, the burps are basically self-care. In every episode here, we talk about self-care. What are you doing for self-care? Or how do you teach your kids self-care? Is it just talking about burps? Cause it's not something, it's something our kids need. But
no, my kids don't want to talk about this with me. They're like, peace out, mom. They'll be like, don't social work me. And I'm like, ugh. So I have found the most effective way to communicate with my kids and teach them about self-care is by doing it myself and talking to them about what I'm doing in the least obnoxious, intrusive way possible. So for me, here's what self-care looks like. Being super uptight about sleep. Like my sleep fell apart dramatically, right? During pregnancy and when my kids were little. And that's when my anxiety disorder really took off, right? And so sleep is non-negotiable. So we have friends who want to learn Mahjong with us. And I was like, that's great as long as I'm home by 8:30. And they were like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, and I'm like, nope, sorry. Like 8:30. That's my hard cutoff, in bed by 9 every night, preferably in bed by 8:15, but that doesn't always work.
Wow. You're one of those people. I'm so impressed.
No, don't be impressed. Don't be impressed. This is like, because my body wakes up between 5 and 6 every morning, whether I want it to or not, whether I need it to or not. And that's how much sleep I need to function. So this isn't like me being awesome. It's just me realizing that I'm a complete wreck the next day without enough sleep. My husband is way more flexible about sleep than I am. I am not. So a big, huge portion of my self-care is setting limits around evening activities and getting in bed on time.
I think I'm mostly impressed that your communication of the boundary with people and just holding it, because we don't do that like with sleep. We downplay sleep as a society.
I know we do. I know. And I've been thinking about that for years, and it's a huge problem. But for me, sleep is a lifesaver. It's the only way I'm functional. And, every once in a while we'll make an exception. If there's a concert we want to go to, or if there's a wedding or something important, of course I'll go. But in general, sleep is a huge priority for me and for my kids. And so when my daughters were little, there were just events we never took them to because bedtime was like 7 p.m. And I was like, sorry, we got to be home by 6 to get ready for bed. And that sounds crazy. That is crazy to be home by 6. But my kids the next day were horrible, and it wasn't their fault, right?
Right.
If they didn't get enough sleep. So I'm pretty hardcore about sleep. The other thing is exercise or body movement. So I get some kind of exercise or body movement every single day. I'm not a marathoner. I'm not like hardcore, but I have a Peloton bike that I love, or I go for walks, or I go for a swim or something. But I have found that as much as I may not feel like exercising at some point, for me, it's so worth it because quite honestly, I'm so much less bitchy with my family.
Exercise is a huge button reduction practice for me. Like before and after, I'm a different person.
Yeah. And so I do these things, but I also try to talk to my daughters about it. And it's gotten to the point where they know, and they'll say, "Hey mom, have you exercised today?" Which if I have not exercised, I usually want to bite their heads off and be like, "Who are you to talk to me about exercise?"
I kind of growl about it. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's because I haven't exercised.
They're like, have you done that? No. Why?
Why are you talking to me? And so I try to talk to the kids about my experience.
Yeah.
And say, you know, I'm less anxious. I'm less cranky. I'm less likely to blow my top when I've exercised, when I've slept, when I'm not hungry. I'm like the epitome of a hangry person. Mm-hmm. And my husband knows this. And so he feeds me a lot.
It's good to know. Yeah.
And I make a joke that sort of the care and keeping manual of Carla has gotten a lot thicker and longer as I've gotten older and had kids. And that's okay. I've just sort of learned that about myself and gotten pretty good, not perfect, but perfect's not an option, at making
their practices. Yeah.
And watching my daughters, you know, figure this out for themselves. So my daughter came home from a really hard basketball practice one day and was like, "I think I feel better when I exercise." And I was like, "I'm going to go bang my head against the wall because I've been saying this to you for 10 years. But she, you know, every generation of humans has to figure this out for themselves.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
So, the other thing I wanted to bring up was I noticed, like, when I'm reading this book and thinking about Inside Out 2 that I watched this summer, that it's easy to point out other people's freakouts, as like a learning lesson. And that Inside Out 1 and 2 are great teaching reminders if you need that language for your kids.
I totally agree. I wish every parent who has a kid that someday or interacts with any kid that someday will go through puberty or is going through puberty. I want them all to go watch Inside Out 2. I went to see it with both my daughters who are 15 and 14 this summer. And I thought that movie just did such a phenomenal job. And also one of the things I actually don't think I talk about enough in this book, but that's really important is the trigger that is hormones, right? And that hormones, and we sort of, with my editor, made a conscious decision that we weren't going to get into that. But hormones really play a huge role for boys and girls and non-binary kids and all the kids in
all the humans.
Really humans, right? A kid might be getting enough sleep and moving their bodies and spending time with friends and spending time outdoors and listening to their favorite music and taking deep breaths and doing all of their awesome births. And they still lose it because hormones are really powerful and body changes are really overwhelming. And so that's when compassion, that's really when we have to all dig deep into compassion and not beat ourselves up and not approach this with blame and shame, but try to approach this with curiosity and compassion and love and, hey, what's going on for me right now and what do I need? And that's generally when it can be useful to talk about puberty, which kids don't often want to talk about, which is why I actually started talking to my kids about puberty when they were about 5 years old, which is a great time to talk about it because a 5-year-old, it's not so intense, it's not so relevant. And so my 5-year-old was like running around the house with a maxi pad on her forehead because she thought it was hilarious.
Because it is.
It is. It was really hilarious. And then years later, when she's actually going through this, she has a sense of what's happening. But this is why I loved Inside Out 2, because I just felt like it does such a great job of depicting these changes, and it can really give parents and kids a sense of, oh, this is the chaos beneath the surface, and it's nobody's fault, and we just got to get through it.
Well, how are you enjoying your teenagers? Do you have a family fun thing that you're doing right now to end the episode?
I love my teenagers. I love the teenage years. I would rather hang out with teenagers than toddlers any day of the week. All the time. Give me all the snark, all the eye rolling, all the hilarity. They're great. So as you and I are recording this, my teenagers are at 7 weeks of summer camp, which was something they really wanted to do. And I was like, dude, you're just getting so fun and now you're leaving me. But I supported this. This was their choice and they're having a blast. But actually one of the things, a family tradition that we have that I'm hoping we will continue next year that we started during COVID is we end every day watching a funny TV show together. Because during COVID, I decided that we needed to laugh and we needed to laugh every day. And I make myself laugh all the time, but as your kids get older, they don't always think you're hilarious, which is obviously a them problem and not a me problem, but whatever, they'll come to it. So before they went to camp, we watched Ted Lasso together, which not only is like hilarious, but it's also heartwarming. It's really about people being their best. And then, I'm hoping when they come back, we have a few other shows lined up, and also Bluey is just a perennial favorite. So if we don't have time,
it's epic.
It's amazing. And if we don't have time for a full episode, the four of us will sit down and watch an episode of Bluey and like get our laughs out and then go to bed. So I have been known to say to my kids, you need to hurry up and finish your homework so we can watch our show.
Yeah, it's mandatory having fun. Yeah, I want to enjoy you. Like, let's laugh together. I want to be grumpy grannies together. Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh, the grannies.
Yeah.
Damn it,
so much
Lita.
Fun.
They're the best. So, what does your family do for like the fun family thing?
We watch a lot of music videos together. We're like, they're geeking out over 21 Pilots, my kids are, and the new tour and the new album. So we watch music videos together on YouTube.
That's amazing. I don't think we grew up in the MTV generation. I don't even think I realized that bands were still making music videos.
Yeah, they're just straight to YouTube though, right? So yeah.
I love that.
So we watch music videos in the evening, and then we watch a lot of Bluey because like everyone finds something funny about Bluey, and it's short.
Everyone loves Bluey.
Yeah.
We should just have a Bluey podcast where we just talk about the episodes so we can rewatch them.
That would be fun. That would be so fun.
Bluey's
the Bluey recap. Well, where should people find your book? It comes out September 10th. Should they pre-order it? All the things.
Folks can pre-order wherever they like to buy books. So I always encourage people to support their local independent bookseller. And if you didn't know this, you can walk into your local independent bookstore and pre-order a book.
That's awesome.
Like pay for it and they'll get it and they'll call you when it's there. But if you also are into the big online retailers, it's available all these places right now. And the trick that a lot of people don't know is that sometimes, not always, but sometimes if you pre-order a book, you'll actually get it before the official publication date.
Sometimes, yeah. And I'd like to put it in my holds request for the library to let them know that people should put it in their library system and request it that way too.
I am such a big fan of our library. I'm there every week. And so you can, almost every library webpage has a place where you can request that they get a specific book. And it doesn't always work because, libraries have budgets and everything, but give it a shot.
I always like to try.
I always try. So that's, yes, a big supporter of libraries. If that's where you get it to, and it will be out, digitally as well as an ebook.
Awesome.
So that will be an option too.
Great. Well, thank you. Do you have any last words you want to say?
I just want to remind everybody that freaking out is normal. It's a thing we all do, but that there are skills and strategies that you and your kids can learn and practice, that'll help you freak out less. And when you do freak out, you'll freak out, it'll be less intense and it'll feel more manageable. And as your kids get older, this will get easier. So remember that those little brains are developing so fast right now, and it's going to get easier as they get older.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
And thank you for your podcast and everything you do to support moms, Christy. It's just awesome.
I'm glad we get to network and be here at the same time on Earth together. It's amazing.
It is amazing. I love that for us.
I hope that this episode made you laugh and giggle and feel way less alone. Motherhood is way too serious to be serious all the time and way too fragile to do alone. So text this to another friend, the one that you like to call when your kid is having that freak out moment, and figure out how to help each other out. You have always been exactly the right mom for your kids, and I'm here, shoulder to shoulder with you. We can make the world better, one little kind moment with our kids at a time.